Welcome to Directionally Correct, Beyond's podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, Mark Effron, president of the Talent Strategy Group.
Hey, Directionally Correct fans. If you're looking to stay connected to the podcast, make sure to subscribe to our Substack newsletter, watch our videos on YouTube, or listen to the podcast on your app of choice. This podcast is dedicated to you to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics. We are a listener-supported podcast, so please consider becoming a patron. If you'd like to support the podcast by becoming a patron, you can find a link to sign up in the show notes or at patron.podbean.com/directionallycorrect. Thanks for being a listener. All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization.
Did you throw your hat like at the end of graduation? Get that mortarboard up in the air?
I did in high school.
Yeah.
That was a thing. Did you do that?
Not PhD. Definitely high school or undergrad. I don't remember, honestly.
Mark, did you throw your tassel and hat at graduation when you graduated high school or college?
Well, both of those were a number of decades ago. So, college, I probably did for grad school. Undergrad, I don't remember. In high school, I did whatever I was told to do. So I'm not sure.
So you're a rule follower. That's good.
No, when you're living in your parents' house, you follow the rules. As soon as I stopped doing that, then the rule following dropped dramatically. My dutiful derailer is at 0, so that might suggest how much I follow rules.
Oh, that's interesting. See, I was thinking like somebody that practices Muay Thai would have to be quite the rule follower, but I don't know.
I follow rules that I like following, and I tend to sign up for those rules very aggressively, but it's probably a very narrow subset of the other rules I should follow.
So wait, you do Muay Thai? Is that the art of the 8 limbs or whatever? Thailand?
I am a Muay Thai practitioner, yes. Have been for about almost 10 years now. Not good, but still trying.
I saw this it's a video of it. She's like an 8-year-old little Taiwanese girl, and she's landed like a devastating roundhouse kick to this dude's face, and it was unreal. Like, wow, this little girl just demolished this guy.
They start at like 3. By the time you're 8, you're like a journeyman. It's like, I'm going to retire at 10.
A little kid will mess you up.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, there's some of the videos they show of like, teens kicking down a bamboo tree, just like continually doing roundhouse kicks on a bamboo tree until they literally chop it down. It's like, okay, I'm going to keep my distance.
It's like the real life Kill Bill, right? Where she's just doing the 1-inch punch over and over. Real life.
It is crazy.
Well, Mark, it sounds like they might have read your book about 8 steps to high performance in terms of how they're training these folks to get world class.
I'm not sure I have a combat sports chapter in there, but who knows? Where are my cheat sheets for this conversation?
Well, you do talk about like taking care of the body and stuff, which is a bit different than, traditional, IO methodology or, messaging rather.
Which is also weird how little, because I searched a lot for anything that was conclusive, and not like mindfulness stuff, but like, exercise leads to, and there just is so little out there. Sometimes things that seem so obvious. It's like, well, yeah, if you're alive, that's going to help you be a higher performer, but that's a 3-way interaction, not a 2-way interaction. So,
like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like you need to be alive first.
Yeah.
then we'll build you up from there.
Can you fog a mirror? Okay, good. Let's keep that conversation going.
That's awesome. Well, I will say, I have to admit, Mark, my favorite thing that you have ever written is that 8 Steps to High Performance book. And I think just because one of the things that I really appreciate about you is you ground everything that you do in research. And there's not, and I think you probably agree with this, there's not a whole lot of people that are popularizers of, HR concepts that actually ground what they do in research. And so, what was your motivation for writing that 8 steps to high performance? And can you kind of hit some of the high notes there?
Sure. Excuse me. 8 steps was really a follow-on to one-page talent management, and that one-page talent management was the first, my third book, but the first one I really cared about, where it was, look, there's so much great science. Do this, you'll get this, and let's make it really easy. So that was really intended as a handbook for HR leaders to do stuff. And we were fortunate; a lot of people picked that up, but 98% of the population never heard that stuff. So in many ways, 8 steps was saying, direct to consumer. Look, there's a bunch of science. It tells you how to be better. If you care, just do this. So that was really the motivation there, is let's get the message out to more people. If you want to be a higher performer, not everyone does, but if you want to be a higher performer, there's actually a pretty well-trodden path to get there. Here you go.
Well, and it's not like you have to take an ice bath or you have to wake up at 4 a.m. and run 20 miles. Like it's very practical and it's very research based. And I think it's super helpful because, you don't have to be on a diet where all you eat is broccoli
in the morning.
And you could exactly.
Yeah, there you go. Whoever that admiral was who gave that classic YouTube video. Yeah. But it just proves, it's the old, and so much of what I do just channels Marshall Goldsmith. It's, Marshall Goldsmith is like, diet and exercise. It always works. Now, if you stick with the stuff that works, great. And what I happy I do is I never proclaim it's a new Mark Effron idea. It's simply, I read a bunch of stuff and I have a decent enough brain I can sort through it and say, this stuff seems to be closer to truth than this stuff. So do this stuff and do it in this way. So it also de-risks it for me because it's not Mark Effron's advice. It's a bunch of smart other people's advice. If they're wrong, I'll apologize and say, sorry, I made a mistake in interpreting it. But, it's not like I have to do a ton of original research to rediscover
like goal setting theory, ASA, attraction, selection, and attrition, all these sort of concepts. And like you say that you were able to like sift through the resources and this sort of stuff. Like, what was it like based on your experience as well, or was it, some sort of like model that you came across?
It's really inductive research, meaning let's just start with looking for an article that says something about if I do X at work, I'll get better. Cool. Let's look at all the sites. Oh, there's another art. It's literally that level of just let's take the kitchen sink and boil it down and see if it yields anything interesting, and if we can slice that into a few categories that make it more digestible for people. But it's definitely not starting out with a hypothesis. There's so much information out there. Can I correlate it, organize it, structure it in some way that's going to be more helpful for folks? Which also goes back to my frustration. Why don't academics do that so I don't have to? But I guess I'm glad they don't, because I wouldn't have a business if they did.
Why don't academics do that? Sorry.
I don't know why do academics write titles of articles that I have to look up 3 words of the title before I even read the article? I don't know. I think it's smart people like to look smart. I read academic articles every single week, and every single week I read sentences where it's just like, you really needed an English major sitting next to you as you wrote this, because those 40 words are actually 6 words, but for some reason you felt the need to say it.
It's so funny that you say that, Mark, and this is going to be so off the wall. Right now, I came across on LinkedIn, somebody tagged a link to Hugo Munsterberg's 1913 book that kicked off IO psychology. It's called Psychology and Industrial Efficiency. I'm reading through it right now, and you know what's the best part about it? It is so approachable. None of the language is arcane, and everything in there is incredibly practical. It could have been written by Mark Effron. And so, like, I think it's excellent, and it's really good to kind of go back to the foundations. But yeah, I totally agree that we should be going this direction. I don't know, Scott, from your perspective, like, what's the important stuff that academics are missing right now?
Well, you're going a different direction. Like okay. Back to what Mark was saying. I think the academics, like they what gets them published? Yeah. It's like very small, sort of narrow fields, right? And like it makes sense. Like when you get too involved, you like too involved in your own work, like you can't see the forest through the trees, right? So you need someone like Mark or, anyone that's a practitioner to come through and be like, okay, I need some practical advice here. And here's all the great things I see.
No, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'll drop my mic pretty
soon. Like, I think that's a good transition. And one of the things we talked about prepping for this, Mark, was about the science of good talent management. And I know you guys covered that in One Page Talent Management. Can you kind of give us some of the key insights that, practitioners of talent management should be thinking about, and the wisdom that they could gain through that book?
Yeah, let's just start with the fact that there is an unbelievably voluminous amount of facts that exist that tell us how to manage people at work. And as fun as you guys are like, well, yeah, but 99% of HR practitioners don't know that. They don't know that actually the answers, not all the answers, but a lot of the answers are already out there. Therefore, you don't need to make stuff up. You don't need to say, hey, McKinsey, what should I do? Because the answers are already there. You simply need to look for them. And that was the premise of One Page Talent Management. One, my frustration that folks either didn't know or weren't applying the answers that we actually know work. And then what we already talked about, that on the academic side, they weren't making it easy for folks to digest it. And so the point of One Page Talent Management was simply to say, I've been a practitioner, I've been a consultant. This stuff isn't that difficult. Now it doesn't mean it's easy, but it's not that difficult to do right. Performance management, what do we know works? We know setting goals works. How much does it work? It works a lot. How conclusive is it? It's super conclusive. Therefore, you need to set goals. Then the practitioner side, hey, how do we make that easy? Well, probably no more than 3 or 4. So One Page Talent Management was really simply trying to say, you don't need to spend as much time and effort because that's not working. Again, this is 15 years ago. That's not working in a lot of cases. If you want to work better, apply the science, do it in a simple way. And so the intent was, let's talk about the most popular talent management practices, performance management, talent reviews, 360s, engagement, whatever else we had in there, and simply lay it out. Look, and we always say, start with the science. Science says this, therefore, you should probably do this. And we're just very fortunate the book landed at a time when talent was becoming a hot topic, and some folks liked those ideas. So it was a very good foundation for the work that my firm does. And in many ways, it was also, though, a bit my telling myself, put up or shut up, kind of, oh, you think you have a better way of doing it? Good. Get your ideas out there. See what happens. And because I do that a lot to myself. It's like, oh, you think you're smart? Well, go see if somebody else thinks you're smart.
Yeah.
And got lucky with that one.
Are there any sort of like wacky things that you saw going on while writing the book?
I mean, in terms of what folks were doing wrong or doing that was uninformed. Well, I mean, let's take something as fundamental as engagement surveys. This always seemed like one. I love surveys. I mean, I'm not an IO guy. I learned about surveys in business school. I'm like, this is cool stuff. And it always seemed like the result of the survey should tell you what to do, not how many people responded at what level. And so I couldn't understand why all these consultants, the Mercers and the Towers and others at the time, would come back with these 80-page lovely, color guides that were all, well, they were 3.65 out of 5 on this. It's like, I don't know what the hell that means. Yeah. Why don't you do, and I'm not a big stats guy, but why don't you do a basic regression and simply tell me, hey, what leads to that? Tell me what the levers are. And that's what I did when I was back at Avon as head of talent management, as friend we were working with then, one of the big firms, and said, look, the reports you spit out need to say, hey, Ms. Manager, Mr. Manager, we've done the analysis for you. These are the 3 strongest drivers of engagement in your group. Work on these. And so seeing things like that, where it was, yes, I understand you, big consulting firm, produce a lovely report, all the statistics are right, but no one knows what to do with that. Or they instantly go to low score. Oh, low score, comp must be the issue, but that's a low score. It's like, all we're doing is making it difficult for folks to get to the right answers. So that would kind of one of the examples of you're just needlessly complicating things and not even getting to the right answer.
Isn't that HR's job, though, to make it hard to get to the right answer?
I will let that sit.
I was telling Scott before I brought my whole goal today is just to provoke Mark to say what he really wants to say.
Yeah, ain't gonna happen. I've had media training, Cole Napper. I know what to do. I'll bridge to another topic. What else would you like to talk about today?
Sorry, you go, Scott. Well, I was thinking about some of the more recent things that we've actually covered 2 of your articles recently on the podcast. We talked about, is the juice worth the squeeze? And I think it's called, it's not the mortar, it's the bricks, or maybe it's the bricks, not the mortar. I can't remember the exact framing of that title. And so, well, I'll let you choose. Which one of those would you want to go to first? Because we've kind of been banging on about HR. Maybe it's the mortar one we could talk about, and operating models.
Sure. The mortar, not the bricks is really an article that says, let's stop playing around as much with org structure, because we all know that it's the white space that matters most. And that's what most organizations, most HR organizations, don't think through. Because I saw a lot of my clients, and even when I was in corporate HR, a lot of playing around with org structure, and then things didn't work as well as they should afterwards. It's like, well, yeah, you didn't put any of the wiring in. It's like you put in all the 2x4s, but there's no wiring to actually get anything to work in this building. And so the point of it's the mortar, not the bricks, or not the bricks, but the mortar, however I said at the time, was really to say it is the wiring within HR that matters most to get things done. And it's really thinking through in a lot of detail for a basic, we just talked about goal setting, a basic process like goal setting. Cool. Who does what? Now, as simple as that might sound to a typical business leader, well, I'm sure you guys can figure it out. Who trains people on this concept? Who is actually accountable for the head of Asia Pacific having goals in the system? Literally all those level decisions is where HR misses each other. Either HRBPs don't want to do it, or the talent people. And as annoying as it is to have to get down to that nit level of wiring, that's where things are made or broken. And so while I tend to operate at a higher level than that, I actually love doing that type of work, because you're solving the real problem, which is Susie thinks that Sam's going to do it. Sam thinks that Susie's going to do it. You never talk to each other about it. Therefore, it blows up and the business says, why don't you people get your stuff together? You're frustrating me. And so that was really the point of that article, is to say, yes, there are great structural questions and we should have structural answers to them. That's not where stuff blows up. And I have another kind of article, we don't tie to it, but it's really related to it, which is HR versus HR, which basically says, look, you have human beings who care about power, turf, and control. They're not naturally going to get along. You probably need a structure or a process to help them. And that's kind of the underlying thought process there, which is, yeah, we can solve structure problems all day long. It's not that difficult, but solving how humans work together is a far more difficult problem.
Why can't we all just get along, Mark?
There we go. We'll put that out of the ether and see what comes back.
I mean, these are like the deep sort of psychological questions that are really tough to get at, right? Like you bring together a collection of people that really want to achieve, right? They want to achieve their own goals. And you say, like, everyone get in the room together. It's like, oh, well, shit. It turns out everyone has conflicting interests and, trying to achieve their own thing. But I mean,
yeah, no, I think, and I think that's actually why, Mark, you may be uniquely qualified. I think you had a background as a political consultant at one point, and politics is all about managing competing interests, right?
Well, here's the short version of the long story of how the political consulting element influenced my career. Back when I was a very young individual, my wife and I moved to Southern California, didn't have any jobs, but I'd worked for a congressman for a couple of years. And so I fell in with a group that did political consulting in Southern California for land developers. Now, this was many, many years ago when a lot of Southern California was still dirt. And there are a lot of people saying, I can make some money if I put up houses or shopping malls or et cetera. So you made money by borrowing money from the bank and then getting stuff built as quickly as possible to pay the bank back and take your profits. So the shorter that time period was between borrowing and building, the more money you made. Now, that time period was governed by a lot of political approvals, but little things like water boards and school boards and ag boards, and people had an actual vote on your $50 million mall. Our job was to go out into these places in the middle of nowhere and meet with Susie Smith, who is running for water board, and say, look, Susie, if you want to win, you need 50% plus one. Here's what you do. You print up signs that look exactly like this. You go door to door, and here's the script that you read. And we had one other piece of advice. But basically, the firm I worked for had boiled it down to, if you want to win an election, there are three things you do. And you simply execute flawlessly against those three basic things. That had massive influence on kind of everything I do today, which is there are a few things that matter. Let's figure out what those few things are, do them flawlessly, and not really worry a bunch about everything else.
Would you say that there were 3 steps to high performance in politics?
I do my best to avoid any political discussions whatsoever.
Sorry, that was a terrible play on words.
I can only make so many. I make plenty of enemies on my own. I don't need to add other fuel to that fire.
Like coming back to the 8 steps, like I'm really concerned about, you know, the future, like how like generative AI is changing it. Do you think that being authentic will have a greater value in the future? Or like, I mean, you talk about faking it, fake it till you make it. Will being authentic be a bigger skill set in the future?
What's your hypothesis about why it might be?
Because when in a world where everything's fake, people are going to search for something that's real, right? I mean, like we don't, like, take this podcast for example, where we just banter, right? Like we don't come with an agenda per se. It's not scripted in any fashion, as you can attest to right now. And I think that really resonates.
Yeah, we started. You didn't actually tell me we started or not.
We'll hit record in a moment.
I'm going to change, but
no. Well, I mean, I'll comment on it, Scott. I think that I'm curious. Like, what's his name? It's Tomas Chamorro
from music. Yeah. I was going to go there as well.
He's got this book that's coming out, which is like, I can't remember the title, but it's like basically like "Don't Be Yourself" or something like that. And it's like all the research that shows that being authentic actually hinders you in the workplace.
Keep it real.
And so his argument, I guess, would be no, but yours was framed more around in the age of AI. And so there is a part of me that thinks that, you know, the part that AI is not going to, you know, this isn't the right word, but like take over is our humanity. Right. And so that a part of humanity is authenticity. Whereas I feel like AIs are already really good at the rote things, and especially, you know, maybe like the inauthentic forms of communication. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe there is some variance that's accounted for by authenticity. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Mark?
I think the starting question would be, how are we defining authenticity? Is authenticity simply a proxy for a human being, or is authenticity defined as unvarnished communication of my thoughts and feelings? Because I think that it really depends on how we're defining it, whether it's going to be more or less or equally valuable in the future.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a certain amount of just chameleon effect. You have to adapt to your surroundings and like the changing environment, this sort of stuff, just to get along. Like people really knock on, say, being agreeable, but I think it's because of our society, we're rather individualistic, this sort of stuff. But being agreeable and like just going with the flow will get you a long way. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, it also depends on what does a long way mean? Because if you look at all the literature, it says agreeableness is not a predictor of success at work. It's a predictor of how many colleagues you have at work, but a really driven people who doesn't piss most people off is probably just fine. It's like, Mark's okay. He's a decent enough guy. Are you buddies with him? No, not really. I mean, so agreeable, I don't know. If we go to authenticity as, it's the unvarnished me, I should be able to show up however I want, then I'm definitely in Tomas's camp, which is no. You know, you assume that your unique spikes are somehow desirable. They are not. We're gonna wipe the top of those spikes off because, you know, those are the unpleasant parts of you. So I would suggest there's no reason that the things that cause you not to fit into the workplace today are going to be somehow more valued in the future because you're a live bag of blood and bones saying it, as opposed to Sam Altman's mouthpiece saying it.
Because no one has a job in the future, and it's just like some sort of
there you go. All jobs have devolved into skills, and everybody will just show up and perform their skill and then go to another Yeah.
No. It'll be like Wall-E, where everyone's just like sitting in a chair looking at a video monitor, and we're all just like, "What are we doing here?"
We're all just being bags of bones and blood.
There you go.
Well, Mark, one thing I wanted to talk to you about was is the juice worth the squeeze? Because of all the stuff that's been coming out over the last few years about skills-based organizations. And I know the article was pretty critical of some of that stuff. But before we get into that, I was wondering, what's the charitable take, or what's the pro take on why you should be investing in skills? Like, is there a pro take from your perspective? And I know there's a lot of hype, but if there was a non-hype version, what would that be in your mind?
Well, let's start with what's a skill.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to be charitable about something, I need to know what I'm being charitable about. How would you define a skill?
Do you want me to actually do that right now? Or are you being rhetorical?
No, this is not rhetorical.
I go back to, so Scott and I are both classically trained as psychologists. We learn about job analysis first. It talks about knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics associated with tasks. And the skill component was always the component that shows the variability in proficiency that you need to be able to do something. Right. And so that would be how I would define it. I mean, I could probably get out a textbook or something that read something off, but I don't have it memorized.
Like a goal-directed behavior, and that's how I define skill.
Yeah.
Okay. I think and I wrote this in the article, that's the starting challenge. Is if you read Deloitte's take on it, it's everything. It's intelligence, it's personality factors, it's actually learned capabilities. And that was my first caution and I don't like having to write about this stuff because in many ways it's a waste of my time. We don't work in the skill space. I don't make money selling skills. I don't make money not selling skills. In many ways, I write that stuff to say, it's fine. Let's not waste our time on stuff and focus on things that actually matter. So the starting point on skills is, what are we talking about? Why do we need them? But more importantly, why are skills a better avenue to develop capabilities at work than anything else? It's simply a subsegment of a competency or a subsegment of an experience. So why are we saying this is the right level of granularity at which to discuss the future? I have nothing against them, but it really goes in many ways, my bias, kind of L&D people looking for something to make them feel relevant. And it's like, oh, skills, finally, something to make us feel relevant. And then the eightfolds and others come in. They're like, oh, you are relevant. Here's some technology to make you even more relevant. Oh, we'll buy some. And it felt like this conversation was L&D to vendor to L&D to vendor to L&D to vendor. And it's like, you all need to take a breath and realize, hopefully you've been training people for years because that's your job. So what have you been doing for 30 years if you absolutely fundamentally need skills right now, or else the world's going to explode? Kind of feels like this came about as a solution that was so important we do now. It's like, why? What have you been doing the past 30 years and try to claw back your paycheck if you didn't know how to do it until this happened?
There's definitely like a right tool for the job, right? Like if you need someone to program in Python, like there's no real way around that. That's a skill that you need. However, if you hire really smart people, that's a fungible skill set. Not only that, but have the personality to run through a fucking brick wall. Like, give me that person. Sign me up, because they will do anything. They will learn that skill. And now you got like a workforce that can really excel.
And at some level, it matters a lot. I'm sorry, go ahead, Cole.
No, I was just curious because I definitely kind of I'm sort of frustrated about a lot of things that you're frustrated in terms of like how it came to be with like a lot of the hype that's around this. But I think there was like this other competing narrative about work being deconstructed and the gig economy and how that was coming about. And so the future of work wasn't going to be about roles anymore. It was going to be about deconstructed jobs and how do you effectively deconstruct them? Well, it could be competencies, or it could be even smaller than that, down to the skill level. I don't know. What is your reaction to that? Because, like, I mean, there's tons of scientific research that shows the relationship between competencies and effective work in organizations, right? And so what would you like? What about that train? Not just the hype train, but the actual, like, is there any merit to this?
The efficient side of my brain says, wouldn't it be really cool? We're all just kind of bundles of skills. Great. I'm going to allocate some skills over here and some skills over here. And as a consultant, I basically do that every day. So the efficient part of my brain says, yeah, that would make a lot of sense to deconstruct jobs and have people apply themselves when and where it's going to be most valuable. That makes sense. And then you get to the real world. And in the real world, people want stability. And they don't want to be out on their own selling a piece here and a piece there. They want to show up. They want to have the same group of 20 people around them because they built some relationships. They feel more comfortable with it. So I think from an ideal standpoint, kind of efficient market hypothesis, yeah, absolutely. In the real world, it doesn't seem to work. And as I wrote about in the article, it's not like this is the first time we've had this discussion. I mean, John Boudreau and Ravin wrote their book on this, and it's like 30 years ago, people were saying the same thing, but we used the word competencies, and we said, oh, jobs are a thing of the past. We got this new thing, and we're going to break jobs into little pieces, and it's called competencies, and we'll have taxonomies of competencies so we can keep track of them, and we will assess and pay you based on your. In theory, love it. In theory, made a ton of, and I admit I have sinned against the corporate world by creating big competency models as a young consultant. And I apologize for that. Bless me, Father.
Is this more of like HR creating the structure but not the wiring? I mean, just like sort of like another analogy.
This is HR pretending that people care about the wiring.
Yeah.
And we have a slide we use in our Talent Management Institute when we talk about this, which is basically shows the guts of an iPad. It says no one is buying this. No one walks into an Apple store and says, would you please pop open this iPhone and show me the circuitry? Because they assume some smart people have designed the circuitry and it'll work just fine. They just want to punch the buttons on the thing and say, how does this thing actually work? And I think we fell in love with competencies. It's like, oh, look at the wiring. It's all elegant. Look, there's 3 bullets that describe every single thing. And there's a 4x5. No one gives a crap about your competency model. They simply want to know, how do I grow my team faster? And I think the challenge was we fell in love with the technical element. We're like engineers. We fell in love with the technical part and we ignored the user interface. And I think that's the same thing with skills, which is, and it feels like right now, oh, we're going to sprinkle some AI pixie dust on it, and it's going to all work because of AI. It's like, no one still cares. They care if they can get a job easier or grow faster, but that's it.
I knew we'd get you there.
I'll step off my soapbox now.
Yeah, the media training failed. We got you. Yeah. I'm glad.
Back to following directions, I'm not always particularly good at that.
I can attest no one cares about my competency model. That's for sure.
It doesn't mean they're wrong. I tell everybody, I don't think I've ever seen a wrong competency model. Because, I mean, smart people put them together. They put a lot of work into them. And so I don't want to say that it's work that's wrong. But again, I have walls in my house because I don't want to see the wiring and pipes behind them. And so, if we think people are going to love the wiring and the pipes, they aren't. They just want to see a well-constructed dwelling.
So, like, how would you turn like a hypothetical competency model and make it useful for the organization? Obviously, every situation is different and all this sort of stuff, but like, what are some elements?
I really like rolling up to experiences. I'm just a big fan of experiences. And my view is we should be talking about holistic delivery of things that involves competencies and skills and behaviors. But the user interface is, hey, Scotty, I need you to go lead a large team in a country that's not your home country through a complex project. Now, you're going to need a bunch of skills and a bunch of behaviors and a bunch of competencies to do that. But what I'm going to evaluate you on is, did you successfully lead that large team in a country that's not your home country? And if I say, Scotty, here's what you need to do, and you're like, got it, Mark, then I don't need to show you the stuff below it. If you say, well, I'm not quite sure how that would work, I can take out of my back pocket the competency model and say, well, let's look at how these competencies will support what you're doing. But true to the one-page talent management mindset, let's start with what's the easiest possible way to explain to Scotty what he needs to do. It's probably not saying, hey, Scotty, I want to talk to you about these 12 competencies I want to see you grow. You're like, okay.
Okay.
It's probably easier to say, here's the outcome I want to see from you. You're going to build a bunch of good stuff along the way. You might not even need to know you're building that good stuff. But if you have questions, great. We've got the wiring back here we can show you.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of like HR processes, and this is the thing I really appreciated the most about one-page talent management, because I think it was the first place I'd ever seen this, is like how important simplicity is. A lot of HR processes are like, okay, we want you to do your job, manager. We also, if you wouldn't mind hopping on one foot while you're doing your job, okay, it looks like you've actually gotten kind of good at hopping on one foot. So like, now can you start to juggle a little bit? Right? Let's juggle a little bit. Okay, now that you're juggling a little bit, what I want you to do is wink your left eye. Okay, if you could just start winking and it's like we keep layering on more and more complexity. And kind of the point earlier from Scott about the wiring versus like the actual job. It's like, let's cut out some of the wiring. Let's make it as simple as possible. We can execute. Let's make sure it's based on the research and that it makes your organization more effective. And so that was really the thing that stood out to me about your work, Mark. So I'm super excited about you being here. But you want to join us in the confusion matrix?
Yeah, I'm already confused by the topic, but let's dig in.
Yeah.
The confusion matrix.
Cole's always winking at me, by the way. That's the way he rolls.
You might want to talk to HR about that. I have nothing. I'm a consultant. I'm not involved.
Actually, winking is like either seen as like super positive or super negative, depending on the person. It's like one of the most variance-ridden behaviors. Okay, so we're gonna ask. We'll do a little grab bag. It's the kind of a random things that pop into my brain. And I'm not saying that we should do these things, but like, what if we did them? And if Cole likes your answer, he will provide you with a social media tile that you can share with your friends and family.
There we go.
And if he doesn't, I don't know, great shame or something like that. Okay, so we're coming back to the office, doing the RTO thing. We've been at our homes for 4 years whatsoever. What if we set up the office to look just like your house? Just have like a living room, a little Christmas tree maybe.
What do you think, Mark?
Are there other people in my house? Because right now there aren't people who I don't want to have in my house. In that scenario, it sounds like I might have uninvited visitors.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess you'd have your coworkers. You'd have your coworkers with you.
Yeah.
And like you're sitting on the couch together.
Yeah.
Little fridge.
There's a reason I'm not in a corporate environment anymore. So the question is this a Mark Effron response or a advice to others? Should we make the environment as comfy as we possibly can? Sure. Yeah, I'll kind of leave it there. I think the curve levels off very quickly in terms of how much effort we need to put into making the workplace feel comfortable and the incremental benefits after making it basically comfortable.
There's definitely something to your environment to where it's designed in such a way that you work there, right? Like this is the behaviors I engage in because of the specific environment.
Well, and the thing I think about related to that, Scott, is the concept of the hedonic treadmill. So if you're doing something and you're presuming that it's going to create a benefit because you gave comfort associated with something, guess what? People get super accustomed to comfort really fast. And then it ceases to be a differentiator. So if having your office look like your house for some reason gives people comfort, guess what? They're going to get used to it in 2 days and it's not going to matter anymore.
It's not going to be a thing anymore. That's fair. Okay.
Hence you're screaming about people screaming about RTO in the first place. It's like, we all RTO'd 5 years ago. And now if it's suggested, people scream bloody murder. And how dare you tell me I have to go to work? Okay.
You go to the work and sit by the fireplace in your like quasi home. You know how it is. Okay. I think you'll like this. I mean, your one-page talent management is more than one page, which is probably confusing. But what if we gave everyone a jacket with their performance rating on it, different colors, and you could walk around the office and just see everyone's performance rating?
Yeah, Scotty, we're gonna have a tough conversation right now.
I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just saying what if
really bad ideas that you've offered up to the company, the harm they could cause to others.
It would be like not Logan's Run, but oh gosh, I'm blanking on where everyone had their different colored jumper suits. It would give you their
first Logan's Run, classic. Now, also, if you want to see the worst special effects ever, if you look at like the little train in Logan's Run, it's like they've given it to a third grader and said, build a little train out of cardboard. They're like, yay, here you go. And they filmed it. But we can come back to that.
That was filmed in downtown Dallas, the Mercantile Market. If you ever go to Dallas, right off of 35. And the final scene where it's like that big like waterfall thing, that's in downtown Fort Worth. FYI.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah.
Everyone should watch that movie, the original crappy version.
It is
I've
solid.
never heard of this movie. Sorry.
I think the bit is like when you turn 32 or something like that, you automatically die. And
A
like,
little thing in your hand lights up and you have to go. And so that's why if you say we've got a runner, only people who have seen the movie know what that means. Because a runner is somebody who doesn't want to die and they take off and try and leave this compound where all the complacent folks are happy to go die.
Oh, I always assumed it had to do with like people trying to get out of jail. Oh, we got a runner. You know?
No. Damn it. The book I'm thinking about is Autolycus Huxley. I can't remember the name of the actual.
Soylent Green?
Not Soylent Green. Anyway, maybe I'll do some research in a little bit. Okay, last one. Mark, you know me quite well. I was in Austin a couple weeks ago, and you know I love to rummage through things. I love going to Goodwill and
finding
Salvation Army, this sort of stuff.
At Goodwill.
What's up?
Instead of finding Patagonia shirts at Goodwill.
Well, okay, this is where that's going. So they had an entire section devoted to corporate merch, right? So it's like nice clothes, but it says Citgo on it or it says Dell on it, and no one wants this stuff. It's like a whole thing, and it feels like it just became trash. Like it's the organization thought they were doing a great thing by giving this merch to people, and it just goes to waste.
It's only trash until the hipsters start wearing it.
Oh, I would repurpose that immediately. Here's what I would do is I buy a Dell jacket. I hear about the big Dell party that's happening, and I walk in going, how's everybody doing? They're like, is that the guy from supply chain? Yeah, I think it's the guy from supply chain. And then you eat and drink on their time.
Mark, you were at the 1987 softball game? That's so awesome.
Yeah, exactly. I'm friends with Bob. Bob over in the shipping, receiving, HR, marketing. Yeah.
We were on that project. We did it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mark, let's do some nerdery. How about that?
Okay. I don't know what that is, but I'm happy to dive in.
The nerdery.
It's got to be better than the Confusion Matrix.
Oh, it's going great. We're going to continue on the pathway. I think this is sort of related to the first one the first Confusion Matrix one. Scott, do you want to talk about this taking dogs to the office?
Oh, I didn't anticipate we'd even make it to this one. So, have you guys ever worked in an office where dogs are allowed?
I have not. No.
Have not. Oh man, I used to take my dog to the office quite often. But we all love dogs, or do we? Sort of stuff. But this research investigates the impact of bringing a pet to the office, specifically on employees' engagement, commitment, quality of life, and dog-related outcomes. So what they did, essentially surveyed 750 employees, and gave them a bunch of surveys. Kind of overkill too. It's like they had 6 turnover intention questions and 33 questions for something else. But essentially what they found is employees who brought their dog to work often reported significantly higher work engagement, lower turnover intentions, and better work-based friendships. Apparently, dog size matters, so smaller dogs had better outcomes.
That size didn't matter. I'm confused now.
My God. We're going there.
I'm sorry. Didn't mean to take the webinar in an off direction.
Yeah, we're all in today.
Dog breed. Apparently, people that had mixed mutts as opposed to purebreds stayed off social media more. I think there may be a little bit of a self-selection bias here with both the dog size and the breed, but whatever. Kind of interesting. Apparently has positive benefits, at least for the person that brings their dog. The people that got to sit next to the dog that, farts or barks, maybe
that
not
was
so
actually my thought related to it. It's like, what about the other people? Like, how did they feel? Especially if it's a person who has allergies or something. But it also, I thought it related really well to your Confusion Matrix question about like comfort. You're like bringing home into the office. And I feel like bringing your dog is something from home. Bringing it into the office does it give you comfort? Sounds like the answer is yes. But I thought about this as we were preparing for it. It's like, what if it was like bringing my blankie to work,
socially acceptable sort of
yeah.
accoutrement.
And it's like, at what point are we going to say, hey, you either A, as a society, we want you to bring your blankie to work, or B, hey, how about you leave the blankie at home? I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that, Mark?
See, my critical mind actually went to experimental design on this, and I noticed they did not control for the personality of the dogs. And so, I want to see some typing of dog personality, because that's an omitted variable, and I think it just destroys the entire conclusion.
We got to get HR on this framework, clearly, right?
Yeah, there's something wrong here. Plus, overrepresented female population, weak spot. And yeah, I bet the non-dog owners weren't on social media, but they weren't wasting the company's effing time posting dog pictures on social media. What does this say to me? Don't hire anybody who wants to bring their dog to work because they're going to be on the gram all day. That's not going to help.
Oh man. I will say, if you do have like a cool, chill dog, bring in the office.
Like, I love animals, so I would love to have animals in the office. But
yeah,
I used to bring my dog to the office, and I could lay down one of those small trash bins in the walkway for my cubicle. So it's like 3 feet, maybe not, maybe 2 feet on each side. Dog could clearly get around it, but he looked at us like, oh man, no, can't get around that.
I know a barrier when I see one. Yeah, that's great.
I just knew having you on, Mark, we get some real gems out of this. So I'm pumped. Let's see if we can continue down this pathway. So I pulled up one about leadership styles, which I actually thought this was really interesting. And so there's an article, I can't remember what journal it's in, but by Eva et al. In 2024, so fairly recent, asking about, are there different leadership styles? And so there's whole journals dedicated to different types of leadership, whether it's authentic, charismatic, servant, transactional, transformational, all the high points.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did, it was a study studying the 12 dominant leadership styles. It was across a bunch of different samples, a bunch of countries, a bunch of participants. So really, really high-powered study. And what they found is that perhaps, much like in cognitive ability, there's a G factor, perhaps there is an L factor in leadership. And so the takeaway is that leadership styles have much more in common than differences. And it looks like there may be some kind of underlying, variable, because if you controlled for the variance of any one individual style, once you remove that L factor, there was negligible impact on the overall variance accounted for. So perhaps there's just one kind of leadership after all. I don't know. What did you guys think about this?
Yeah, I read the study. I loved it because it goes to my cynical nature, which is, there's probably a couple of good ways of doing things. And if you look at the model, it turns out, hey, guess what? There's just a couple of good ways of doing things. But it should be refreshing, because you can then go out and say, look, there's an L. And I love kind of L compared to the G. Yeah, there's an L factor. Cool. If you're going to be a good leader, you're probably doing these 3 things. And if you bought a book that said something else, it probably actually says that, just dressed up. So let's just make your life easier. Do these 4 things, makes you a good transformational leader, and that's life. So if you want to call it something else, have a good time, but don't think it's special and different. So I loved this. I loved also that last point you made, Cole, that they pointed out, which is none of the other factors contributed any additional explanation of the variance. It's like, that's so pure. It doesn't matter. The other stuff beyond the L just doesn't matter. So love the article.
Yeah, I think this is necessary but tiresome. We figured this out in the 1940s and 50s with the Ohio State and Michigan studies. Everything boils down to consider.
Did Michigan win every year? Is that how that study worked?
Excuse me, sir?
Did Michigan win every year? Is that how that study worked?
But Ohio State wins the championship. So, it's good.
Yeah, okay, well.
But we know the initiating structure and consideration are the bubble up points. And if you do those 2 things well, everything else is more situationally specific, right? Just the application of these sort of personalities, be it servant leadership, situational leadership, LMX, which is essentially just being a chameleon and faking it, like you talk about, Mark. But yeah, this resonates, and I think it's one of the most powerful concepts that we have in leadership research. That hey, nail these 2 things, move on with life.
Yeah, guess we don't have to research leadership anymore.
why don't we trim the tails on the conversation since we know this? And to your point, Scott, it's been proven and proven and proven. Why don't we, as the collective IO HR community, whenever a new model comes out, just go, stop,
Yeah.
stop, prove that it's different than anything we've done before, and then we'll listen. But if not, then you're just dressing some stuff up.
Especially if you look at like something like path goal theory. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but essentially every leadership theory into one theory, and you're like, "What? You want me to do 45 things? What the hell is this?" Like,
Well,
yeah.
I actually, I mean, you said that point, Mark, about, stop, and does this do anything new? How are any of the academics going to get tenure if none of them can get published? What are we going to do about that?
Nothing I worry about on a daily basis.
Fair enough.
You got to come up with new things constantly, right?
Yeah,
new leadership. It's sexy. It's sexy. That's why we have all these leadership theories.
Yeah. It goes to, we could all probably be far more effective at work if we simply said, yeah, there's one way of leading, and it's like this. There's one way to goal setting, and it's like this, as opposed to pretending that there are 85 equally effective ways of doing things.
Yeah, make your bed in the morning.
I feel like there's a second version, one-page leadership, and it's going to be longer than one page too.
Here's the 30-second story on that, though, because you're absolutely right. I was giving a speech years and years ago, and somebody asked me what the speech was called. I'm like, I don't know, like one-page talent management. And I gave the speech, and there happened to be a Harvard editor in the room. And she came up to me afterwards and said, hey, love the speech. Do you think there's a book in there? And I said, no, there's not a book in there. One page. I would look stupid writing a book about one-page talent management. And I said, but I've got 3 better book ideas. I'm like, 1, 2, 3. She's like, those aren't good at all. I'm like, let's talk about that one-page thing you mentioned.
Look at
so
you.
Yes, I recognize the disconnect between the concept of one page and the 220 pages that Harvard insisted we write about it.
It's funny how like social pressure works, or like just like someone came up to you and said like, "Hey, I would really like this," and like you were dismissive of it, but like you start thinking about it, right?
It's like, oh, but if you want to write a book, I'll find some way of making it work. Being an absolutist, although I start there, is rarely the right ending point.
I feel that. I feel that. Well, you want to talk about some endpoints now?
Yeah, let's do the next one. Does science advance one funeral at a time?
Yeah, this is a little morbid. So this is what happens when a leader in the field of research dies and passes away. I'm sorry for redundant, but how does this impact the research that follows? So they took 452 elite academics who died between 1975 and 2003, and they matched them to an equivalent researcher, equivalently productive. So they got like a match control group, and they use a difference in difference method. And they have this like really cool thing. I didn't like fully understand it, but it's PubMed RNA. So it's essentially a way to group research papers based on their concepts that they share. So it's like a intellectual connectedness between them. But anyway, what they found is that close collaborators of the passed away professor, researcher, whatever, their publications decreased by about 20%. So maybe they're, mourning or, ran out of ideas or something like that. While the publications of people that did not collaborate with the researcher increased about 8%. But the cool thing about this is that the new collaborators tend to have higher impact, more citation research. All these new collaborators were able to enter the field and build on ideas where perhaps the emissary would restrict them. It kind of hits on this idea of scientific coherence. So we all use the same methods, the same things get published, and what gets funded and what gets actually published is kind of controlled by the one person that leads the field. It's really interesting research that it goes from someone dying and what gets published all the way to like this like social impact of the field, really.
Well, it sounds like the answer is yes. It does advance one funeral at a time, right?
Well, it goes to why, though, as well, because it feels like part of this might be like Boris Groysberg, a star type of stuff. So if a star dies, do the other stars shine more clearly because of that? Mm-hmm. So I think there's some, and I'm doing a lot of research and a lot of writing, not research, around that right now, kind of the true value of stars. But also just, is there room for more than one person in the room? If kind of one person's sucking all the oxygen out of the room, then almost by definition, there's not enough for others. And so by that individual passing away, does that allow more oxygen for others to succeed. So it almost feels more like, does it change the context in a way that allows kind of other plants to grow? Mixing my metaphors there. Sorry.
I mean, I think about it in terms of, I think a lot of non-scientists think that science is just like a mechanical process and the best idea always wins. Yeah. And it's things like these that make me realize that, like, no, science is a very human process, and there could be, just one person that's holding the entire field back, right? And they're not allowing competing ideas to get published or what have you. And so it's actually really important that we understand that. I mean, I had a boss earlier in my career, and they're like, Cole, you do realize, like, the best idea doesn't always win, right? And I was like, no, I actually thought they did. Sorry.
That's not how the world works.
Yeah.
Everything's like, fair, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is fascinating. It really is.
It really is fat. Like Christakis and Fowler in their book Connected, they talk about, I think it was Chinese researchers. They spend like 95% of their time just trying to make connections because that's how they get funded, right? It's not about the research. It's about just making those connections to other folks just to have the opportunity to publish.
That's wild. Is it really 95% of their time?
It's really high. I'd have to go look up the note, like take that as directionally correct. It was a really high percentage of their time. They essentially spend most of their time networking.
Yeah, that's insane.
But yeah, but to your point, yeah, someone passes away and like now new ideas can come in there and they may be holding the field back, or maybe journals are less likely to publish sort of, I don't know, wacky ideas, out there ideas. While they're alive.
Well, I know you had some questions for us, Mark, which I thought were provocative and inflammatory. I thought were funny. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, let's see. I had two completely unrelated. One was just around what's the primary value that people analytics has added to the field. Maybe I'll swap. The primary value that people analytics has added to business over the past 10 years, which we can kind of track the rise. And second question was around why do top universities not allow practical programs in IO psychology?
Yeah, those are great questions. I will give my answers, and I want Scott to weigh in too, but I presume, Mark, before I even answer, that you have some thoughts on these, and so I want to get your perspective and get your answer as well, if you have thoughts in addition to this. So
I mean, go ahead. I'll follow.
So I'll say this: like, what do I think is the most valuable finding? And so there's a variety of ways you could answer this question. You could say, like, what did the top team at the top company do? That's not the answer I'm going to give. I'm going to say, what is the thing that the most people analytics teams did at the most companies that had the most value? And it's going to be very unsatisfying, which is they used to not know simple things like how many people worked at their company, how many people were quitting, how many people they hired. And once those teams existed, they were able to find those answers accurately and reliably for the first time. That was probably the biggest impact. Then there were a variety of impacts that happened after that, but there's so much variance and variability in those, it's hard to say as a standard that was the biggest impact. And so that would be my answer to the first one. In terms of why top universities don't teach more practitioner-focused IO psychology, I don't freaking know, and I wish they did, because it's a big hole in our field, and they've been talking about the scientist-practitioner gap for like 100 years, and I think it would help close the gap. I'll give our university where Scott and I went to school, Louisiana Tech, a lot of credit because they really, really focused heavily on this, and I think that is reflected in Scott's and I's ethos on the world a lot, and I give credit to Tillman Sheets especially about that. But yeah, I mean that would be my answer. I don't know, Scott, what would you say?
Yeah, I'll take the second one first. Like, I think it comes down to like, what do universities and programs get rewarded for? And that's publications, right? It's not necessarily about putting people out at Dell on their softball team or whatever. They don't get rewarded for that. They get rewarded for, citation counts and this sort of stuff. And
there were literal rankings.
Yeah,
and it was like ranking the top programs, and it was one factor, and it was publications, and that's it.
I will say that PsyOp came out and put Louisiana Tech at number one as far as a practical program. Probably
most applied program out there.
2016, 17. I haven't seen those rankings in a long time. But I'll take the same sort of angle on the first question. Like, what's the most impactful thing? I looked it up, and the biggest citation is Bacher and Demerati, which deals with job demands and resources from 2017, about 2,500 citations. So, I mean, just from a citation count perspective, that was the biggest one in the past 10 years. But I think that the natural experiment of the pandemic has really shined a light on how much we need people, how much trust needs to be happening in an organization, how quickly the organization can fracture, how quickly people can lose faith in their job and quit, and the impact it has on culture. We haven't fully figured all this out yet because it's still in process, but I think that's something to look really closely at as we move on.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Scott. Like, there was a lot of really good science. It may not have seen the light of day, but there was a ton of really good science and natural experiments that happened because of the pandemic, and people analytics teams were able to demonstrate their value as a consequence. But and we've had guests on that have talked about it before, but a lot of that stuff never makes it into a journal article or something like that. I don't know. What do you think, Mark? What are your answers?
Well, let me actually riff off that last piece, because I do think that one of my big frustrations over the past year has been the ignorance of the science when we're talking about RTO. And so I wrote this article late last year called Above the Fray, which basically was my best take at trying to figure out where were true experiments written up and what did they say. Because what I heard was just a lot of screaming from each side. The RTO folks saying, oh, people are lazy, you need to work in the office. Yeah. Everybody else saying, well, I work better at home. It's like, those are lovely opinions. But the fact that you're shouting those opinions louder and louder does not increase the persuasion factor of those opinions. They're probably facts. And if there are a lot of unpublished experiments out there, or a lot of unpublished research, I would encourage you both to do whatever you can to stir that pot to get more of that published, because you've got folks like Nick Bloom at Stanford coming out every week saying, oh no, RTO is horrible, and here's a cherry-picked paper that proves it. It's like, no, we need a greater body of research around this stuff. So kind of tangent, but if there is a greater body of research on this stuff, I would strongly encourage you to tell people to post it somewhere so we can have a more fact-based conversation about this stuff.
I heard, to your point, I heard someone describe it as everyone has their links. It's like a link war. I got a link that says that RTO is great, and I got a link that says that, being at the office or, being at home is great as well. I will say that early on, early on the pandemic, when it was almost over in late 2020, I was working in the Michael Arena, and we published a paper essentially saying that, yes, working from remotely is kind of like the way it works. I mean, we're a very globally distributed sort of world at this point, but you need to identify those moments where in-person matters and be very cognizant of these sort of situations, and then bring together at those times, and then everyone can go off and do their independent knowledge work or, personal work. But we do need people, and it's not one or the other, clearly.
Yeah. When I think, back to your point, Scott, about the link war.
Yeah.
And the unsatisfying thing about most of those links is it was just a link to some expert who didn't have any science or data behind it either. So it basically turns into my dad can beat up your dad, because is my expert more credible than your expert, even though neither of the experts actually have data. And I will say, I mean, that's one of the motivations, Mark, why we do the podcast, is because, publishing things, internally, you have to get a lot of approvals generally, and that there is a hindrance there, but also it just takes time and people are busy and all that kind of stuff. But that's one of the reasons we do the podcast, is so people can get their stories out there of cool work that they're doing that can be shared with the world. And it's a lower lift type of solution, but hopefully has a higher impact as well, even though sometimes it doesn't, obviously.
Well, that's great. I think I applaud both of you for doing that. And if you can find people who want to speak broadly about return to office or work at home and what the facts are, I think that would have a ton of value. On the why don't more schools have an IO psychology, a practical IO psychology approach, that is purely selfish. I would love, even though I'm an old guy, I would love to go back and get a PhD in IO psych. But I would want to come back out and do more consulting. And so I can only imagine if I assume you interview before you get into an IO psych program. I'd be in the interview. They're like, what would you like to do, Mr. Effron? Learn this stuff and then go consult. And they'd be like, thank you for your time. We'll be calling you. It's like, why don't they want this great knowledge to get out into the population? It's almost like the scientist practitioner divide is being consciously reinforced by the way that we're structuring academic programs.
Maybe we can give you like an honorary degree or something like that. We can petition. We're gonna be talking to Louisiana Tech.
Participation trophy? That'd be cool.
Yeah. And then, I mean, just to go full circle, then you could throw the tassel off.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow, he brings it back home. Good job, Cole.
Beautiful.
Look at that. Look at that. I think that's probably a good wrapping point. But Mark, I'm so thrilled that you're able to be here. We cracked a few eggs, which is fun, and this is good. But before we give Mark the final words, Scott, any parting words for Mark?
I preparing for this, like I ran across a quote from Jeremy Piven, the actor, and he said, "You can be viciously mediocre, or you can get the fuck after it." And like seeing your 8 steps, I think that's what it gets to. Hey, Mark, you got a SoundCloud to promote?
I don't have a SoundCloud to promote.
It's great talking to you, dude. It's great.
No, I really appreciate the invitation. Love having these just kind of open conversations. There's so much important work that we all do, and you guys contribute in a huge way through your podcast. So keep it going. And if I can be of any help in the future, let me know.
Thanks, Mark. Well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, the People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott, and today's guest, Mark Effron. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Thanks, guys.